They say pain shapes wolves, but what happens when pain begins to desire its own cage? She thought she knew loss, until the night her pack burned, and her mate's scream became the last sound she ever loved. Now she's a prisoner in the castle of the Alpha King who destroyed her world, and the cruelest truth. He's the same man who once saved her life. Hate should have been easy, but every glance, every breath, every unspoken word between them feels like fire finding its way back to her heart. The moon chose her for vengeance. Fate chose her for him. This is the story of the Alpha who turned her pain into something darker. Royal Hearts. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe, settle in, and let the moon decide who survives the night. The wind carried the scent of ash long before Leora could see the ruins. Smoke curled into the night sky like black fingers, clawing at the stars, and the silence that followed was worse than any scream. Her boots crunched on charred wood and bone. She stumbled over what remained of the village's gate, now just splintered beams, and a shiver ran down her spine, not from cold, but from the weight of absence. Her pack had been everything, and now they were nothing. She knelt among the remnants of her home, letting her fingers brush against the scorched earth, tracing the outlines of where laughter had once lived. Memories seared hotter than the fire ever could. The sound of her mate's voice calling her name, the smell of smoke, the terrified whimper of her younger kin. Her hand went to the pendant around her neck, a silver wolf head engraved with her pack's sigil. It had survived, unlike him, unlike the others. A hollow laugh slipped from her throat, bitter and jagged. Pain is all I will ever know, she thought, and I will never bow again. But the night was not finished with her. A rustle in the underbrush made her freeze, ears straining. Leora's wolf sense flickered like a candle in the wind. Something approached, and it wasn't human, or at least, not just human. Her hand went to the dagger at her belt. A shadow moved with impossible grace. Then a figure stepped into the moonlight. Tall, cloaked, and impossibly familiar. Her breath caught. Who? Her voice cracked. The figure knelt slightly, offering a hand, but not in greeting. In the palm lay a pendant, polished silver catching the moon's glow. It bore the sigil of the Blood Moon Pack. Her heart stuttered. Keep it, the figure whispered, voice low, carrying both warning and something else she couldn't place. It's not safe. Not for you. Before she could respond, the figure vanished into the shadows, leaving only the pendant and the scent of iron and wolf. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She clutched the pendant and her jaw tightened. Safe? No one is safe anymore, not ever. But she had no time to mourn or question. A horn blew in the distance, sharp and commanding, slicing the night like a blade. A messenger rode through the blackened fields toward her, mounted on a black horse that gleamed under the blood-red moon. Leora of Ashvale, he called, voice reverberating across the ruin. By order of King Rael of the Blood Moon Pack, you are under his protection. You will come with me, immediately. She staggered to her feet, clutching the dagger, fury igniting in her chest. Protection, she spat. I need nothing from him. Nothing. But the messenger only inclined his head and gestured sharply. Obedience is not requested, it is commanded. Leora hesitated. Rage warred with survival instinct. She could run, vanish into the night, but she knew the truth already. King Rael's reach was longer than any forest, his eyes sharper than any blade. She stepped forward, defiance blazing, and mounted the horse. The wind tore at her hair as they rode. The forest swallowed her cries. Then she saw him. Rael, the king himself, standing in the clearing ahead. Larger, broader, more formidable than the rumors suggested. His crown gleamed faintly in the moonlight, but it was the eyes that held her. Icy, dangerous, yet familiar. They pierced her as if weighing every ounce of her defiance, every scar etched into her skin. And then he knelt, not in submission, but in a way that made her stomach twist. A gesture too intimate for an enemy, too reverent for a king. She could see every line of his face, the scars that ran like rivers across his cheek, and a flicker of something raw behind the icy control. "Leora," he said softly. The sound of her name on his lips was a blade, cutting through years of hatred and grief. Her hands clenched the reins, jaw tight. "Why?" she demanded. "Why should I bow to the one who destroyed everything I loved?" He said nothing, only stood, and the silence between them was louder than any battle cry. The forest around them seemed to hold its breath. The moon's silver light glinted across his armor, across her eyes, and across the pendant now warm in her pocket. The air was thick, heavy with unspoken promises and danger. And in that moment, Leora realized something terrifying. It was not fear that raced through her veins. It was something far more dangerous. Curiosity. Because for the first time since the fire, the man who had taken everything from her was looking at her not as prey, not as enemy, but as something else. Something he wanted. Her wolf stirred in the shadows of her mind, warning her, whispering betrayal, warning desire. But she ignored it. She would survive. She would fight. But tonight, she realized, the game had already begun, and the first move had been made. Rael steps closer, hand brushing against hers, not threatening but deliberate, and says in a voice that drips both danger and intent, "Welcome home, Leora." Those 3 words clung to the night air like smoke, thick, suffocating, impossible to escape. Leora's pulse roared in her ears as Rael's fingers brushed past hers. Not rough, not forceful, just deliberate, enough to make her every instinct scream. The king's eyes didn't waver from hers, steel and storm, carved from command and regret. Home. He dared to call this home. Her voice came out a hiss. "You think chains and ashes make a home?" Rael's jaw tightened. "No," he murmured, "but they can make a beginning." Before she could curse him, his guards moved in, a silent signal, no words spoken. The world blurred around her. Cold hands gripped her arms. She thrashed, teeth bared, her wolf fighting to surface. "Let me go." Rael's tone cut through the struggle, low and resonant. "Take her to the East Tower. No one enters, no one leaves." Leora's fury cracked into disbelief. "You—" But his gaze didn't rise again. He turned away, cloak sweeping through the wind like bloodied silk, leaving her in the grip of armored wolves. The room smelled of dust and moonlight. They dragged her up spiral stairs until her legs burned, and when the door finally shut behind her, the lock clicked like a sentence passed. It wasn't a dungeon, but it might as well have been. The chamber was narrow, stone walls draped in faded red banners bearing the blood moon sigil, a small bed, a single chair, a barred window facing the silver wilderness beyond. Leora paced the floor like a trapped wolf, the sound of her boots echoing back at her. Every nerve in her body screamed to shift, to tear her way through the iron and leap from the tower, but something in the air stopped her. A thick humming energy that made her wolf recoil, a binding spell. Clever, cruel, very Rael. She stood by the window, watching his castle come alive beneath the moonlight. The Blood Moon Keep was vast, spires of obsidian and crimson banners flapping like open wounds. From this height, she could see the courtyard below, where soldiers drilled even at night. The rhythm of their movements was mechanical, lifeless. It wasn't a kingdom. It was a machine built from fear. Her reflection caught in the window. Soot-streaked face, wild eyes, defiance alive despite exhaustion. "Home," she whispered bitterly. "You cage me and call it home." Morning brought no peace. Servants came and went, never looking her in the eye. They brought food but no words, clean clothes but no warmth. The silence of this place was worse than chains. When one servant finally spoke, it wasn't to her face, it was to another outside her door. "They say she's the last of the Ashvale bloodline." "Hush!" "No, listen. The mark of the moon runs in her blood. That's why the king keeps her locked away. If she howls under the wrong moon, she'll bring ruin. Or power, another whispered. The old prophecy. The flame that burns the crown. They say it's her. Leora's breath caught. Prophecy? Power? She pressed her ear to the door, but the voices faded down the hall. Her stomach twisted, not from hunger, but from a cold memory. The pendant, the fire, the messenger who said she was under Rael's protection. Why? Why would a king protect the last survivor of a pack he destroyed? Night returned, heavy and watchful. The wind howled against the tower, rattling the window bars like distant laughter. Leora couldn't sleep. The pendant Rael's soldier had given her earlier still hung heavy around her neck, its edges warm against her skin as if it held its own pulse. Her eyes caught something odd. One of the old tapestries swayed, though there was no draft. Cautiously, she moved closer. Beneath it, her fingers brushed cold stone. Then a gap, a hinge, a door. Heart hammering, she pulled. It creaked open, revealing a narrow passage carved into the wall. The air was stale, thick with the scent of old secrets. She slipped inside, careful, barefoot now to silence her steps. At the end of the corridor was a small chamber lit by moonlight leaking through cracks. Dust floated like tiny ghosts. On a pedestal, in the center of the room, lay something that made her knees weaken. Her mate's pendant. The same silver wolf head that had hung around his throat when he died. She remembered clenching it in her bloodied fist, refusing to let go even as the world burned. But this one bore the seal of Blood Moon on its back. Her breath hitched. No. She stumbled back, shaking her head. Had Rael taken it from his corpse? Claimed her mate's symbol for himself? Or had her mate served him all along? Questions clawed through her chest. None had answers. The courtyard still reeks of burning iron and blood. Leora's trembling hands gripped the cold bars of her tower window, her breath fogging the glass. Below, the body of the accused still twitches in the torchlight, smoke curling like ghosts through the night air. And there he stands, Rael, the Alpha King, motionless at the edge of the courtyard, face carved from shadow. He doesn't speak. He doesn't stop it. He simply watches. Leora's fury trembles into her bones. The king who once saved her life now burns others without blinking. The sight brands itself into her memory. She whispers under her breath, "Monster," before stepping back, retreating into the dark of her room. At dawn, armored guards open her door. The king commands your presence. She's led through silent corridors, the scent of ash still hanging in the air. Every servant she passes bows, not in respect, but in fear. The throne room yawns before her, high arches, black marble, and the throne carved from obsidian stone. Rael sits there, cloaked in crimson. "You ordered that execution," she says, voice steady though her pulse races. His eyes lift to her, unreadable, the same deep storm gray she once thought beautiful. "It was to calm the pack," he replies evenly. "Rumors of witchcraft spread faster than truth. Or maybe truth frightens you more than rumors do," she spits back. His gaze hardens. Then, unexpectedly, softens. His fingers drift to the long scar running down his forearm. "You think I enjoy this, Leora? That I wanted your world in ashes?" She steps closer, voice trembling with restrained rage. "You didn't stop it either." A pause. Silence stretches. The firelight flickers across his face, revealing the faintest flicker of something she can't name. Guilt or longing. Later that day, Rael summons her privately. No guards, no audience. He dismisses protocol, pouring wine into 2 cups. "You remember the forest border war," he murmurs. "The night the Shadowfangs ambushed your pack." She flinches. She remembers. The screams, the scent of pine and blood, and a stranger's hand pulling her from the fire. His hand. "You saved me then," she says bitterly, "and later you conquered everything I loved." "I saved you still." His words hang heavy. "Even now." For a heartbeat neither speaks. The silence hums with something sharp. Too close to yearning, too dangerous to name. That night, Leora's wolf stirs for the first time since her capture. A growl in her chest, an instinct too primal to silence. Her senses sharpen. Every heartbeat in the castle hums like a drum. But beneath the familiar scent of rail, dark cedar and stormfire, another scent lingers. Faint, almost buried, sweet like crushed lilac. A foreign perfume. Someone close to the king is hiding their emotions and masking their true scent. Her instincts hiss one word: deception. Unable to sleep, she follows the whisper of the scent through the corridors. Down into the old chapel the servants refuse to enter after dark. The moonlight cuts through the broken stained glass, scattering red and silver across the floor. Then she sees it. The messenger's corpse, sprawled before the altar, throat slit, his eyes frozen wide. His blood forms a black halo on the stone. In his cold fingers, a folded note. 4 words, written in dried blood. It was never for you. Her pulse races. What wasn't for her? The fire, the war, her capture? Then, a breath. A shift in the shadows behind the pulpit. Someone's there, watching. Leora slowly turns, her heartbeat roaring in her ears. The moonlight catches a flash of steel, and the glint of a familiar crest etched on a dagger, the blood moon sigil. Chapel air felt thick, laced with incense and death. She turned, every muscle ready to shift, but the shadow was already gone. A blur that vanished into the corridor before she could scent it again. Only the blood-stained note remained in her hand, its meaning twisting inside her like a blade. It was never for you. The fire, the slaughter, the screams that haunted her sleep. They weren't meant for her pack. They were meant for someone else. Her rage, once bright and consuming, now cracked with something colder. Curiosity. The castle seemed to hum around her, stone-breathing secrets. Every hallway whispered of things unsaid. By the time dawn bled over the horizon, Leora was no longer trembling from fear, but from the need to know why. She slipped through her door before the guard's shift changed, moving like smoke down the spiral staircase. The corridors were half-lit, quiet except for the distant growl of thunder outside. The scent of rail drifted through the halls, deep, commanding, and infuriatingly steady. It led her to a place she'd never seen before. A heavy door carved with the blood moon crest, slightly ajar. Inside, candlelight flickered over a table cluttered with maps, daggers, and parchment. The air carried the tang of ink and smoke. Rail stood there, tall, broad-shouldered, every inch the king he pretended to be unbreakable. Across from him was another man, his armor marked with the sigil of a rival pack. Leora pressed herself into the shadows, her wolf silent, watching. Rael's voice was low, cold. If the Black Veil Valley resists, burn the bridges first. No survivors this time. The other man nodded grimly. And the girl? Rael's jaw tightened. She stays under guard. The less she knows, the better. Leora's heart pounded. The girl. He was talking about her, again. She waited until they left, then slipped into the war chamber. The air was still warm from their presence. Maps stretched across the table, lines drawn in blood-red ink, circles around territories long since conquered. Her eyes caught a glint of metal on the corner, a drawer, half open. Inside were fragments of old parchment burned around the edges. She reached in and froze. There, among the ashes, was a symbol she knew better than her own heartbeat, a tattoo pattern. The same one that had been etched into her mate's wrist, a crescent entwined with thorns. The piece of parchment bore that mark, alongside the blood moon royal seal. Her throat closed. Her mate had been part of something bigger, a clandestine mission connected to Rael, the invasion, the fire. Everything she thought she knew was wrong. A soft sound broke the silence, Boots. The heavy door creaked. Leora barely had time to hide the fragment in her palm before Rael stepped back into the room, the firelight licking across his features. His eyes locked on her instantly. "Looking for something, Leora?" His tone was calm, but the air between them burned. She didn't answer. Her wolf was ready to strike, but her hands betrayed her, trembling just enough for the parchment fragment to slip free. Rael's gaze flicked to it, then to her. He crossed the room slowly, each step deliberate, the way predators move when they already know they've cornered their prey. She backed into the edge of the table, her heartbeat a drum against her ribs. "You shouldn't be here," he murmured, voice low enough to feel rather than hear. "Then tell me the truth," she hissed. "About the fire. About him." Rael's eyes darkened. He stopped inches from her, so close she could feel the warmth radiating off his body, smell the storm in his scent. His hand brushed hers, prying the fragment gently from her grip. When he spoke, his voice was soft, but it struck like lightning. "You weren't supposed to survive that night." Her breath caught. He took her hand, not roughly, not tenderly, but with a gravity that made her chest ache. He pulled a ring from his pocket, its metal dark, engraved with the blood moon crest, and slid it onto her finger. Cold metal kissed her skin, then burned. "This," he said quietly, his breath grazing her ear, "binds you to the throne. By blood moon law. You belong to me now." Her wolf surged inside her, a snarl caught in her throat. Rael didn't flinch. He only leaned closer, close enough that his next words barely touched the air. "And before this is over, you'll understand why I had to choose you." The storm outside broke. Thunder roared through the halls, rattling the war maps and torches. But inside the chamber there was only silence and the ring pulsing like a living thing around her finger. The thunder still rolled outside when the metal cooled around her finger. Leora stared at the ring, the blood moon crest glinting faintly in the candlelight, pulsing like a heartbeat that wasn't hers. For a moment she thought the trembling in her hand came from fear, until she realized it was the ring itself. The air shifted. Her pulse slowed, then quickened, matching his. Rael's gaze never left her. The storm's reflection flickered in his eyes, a strange sadness behind the command. "You'll feel it soon," he said quietly. "The bond. It listens to intent." "I didn't ask for it," she breathed. "No one ever does." Then he turned away, leaving her in the war chamber with the maps and ashes and a heartbeat that no longer belonged solely to her. Hours later, her body still ached with the phantom tug of that tether, an invisible thread linking her to him. When he moved through the castle halls, she felt a pull in her chest. When he spoke to his guards across the courtyard, her skin prickled with the echo of his voice. By dawn, the news spread. The captive is no longer captive. She is the king's bound. The court gathered in the great hall before sunset. Gold banners hung heavy against the black stone, the sigil of the blood moon, fangs crossed beneath a crescent, woven into every thread. They called it a private bonding ceremony, but the air was thick with gossip, fear, and curiosity. Leora stood in the center of the room, pale light pouring through the stained glass behind her. Her body was wrapped in deep crimson silk, but she felt no warmth. Around her neck, a chain of obsidian stones, cold, binding. Rael entered in silence, crown glinting faintly, flanked by his council of elders. His expression was unreadable. "By law," one elder said, voice echoing, "the blood moon bond cannot be broken once sealed by royal blood. You are now Luna Protector of the king's line." Protector. The word felt like poison. Her mind drifted back to whispers she'd overheard from servants. The blood moon. Lunas don't live long. Their bond drains them, feeds the king's strength, takes their will. Lunars are born to guard the king's heart, even if it kills them. As the elder chanted ancient words, the ring pulsed again, synchronizing with Rael's heartbeat. She met his eyes across the altar. He wasn't proud. He wasn't smug. He looked as though he were memorizing the shape of her pain. For a brief second, she saw something break inside him. Then the sound shattered. A bell screamed from the watchtower, 3 long notes, sharp and urgent. Guards scrambled. The candles flickered violently as the great doors slammed open. A shout. "Intruder! On the parapets!" Rael moved instantly, instincts overtaking ceremony. "Stay here," he ordered, already drawing his blade. But Leora's wolf surged, the bond yanking through her chest like a chain as she followed, unable to resist the pull that tied her to his life. They burst into the courtyard. Arrows sliced the rain. On the upper wall, a figure in black scaled the parapet with inhuman speed, mask glinting silver beneath the lightning. Leora's breath caught. The mark on the assassin's sleeve, twisted thorns curling around a crescent. The same sigil from the burned fragment. The same mark her mate had worn. Her world tilted. Rael shouted an order. Guards surrounded the wall, but the assassin was faster, leaping down, blades flashing. He cut through soldiers like shadow, eyes locked on Rael. "Don't," Leora whispered, stepping forward, but the words never reached him. The assassin lunged. The blade struck, not once, but twice. Rael didn't block, didn't dodge. The dagger went clean through the assassin's body and into the king's chest. Leora screamed, reaching him as the intruder fell. Rael's knees hit the stone, his blood mingling with the rain. She caught him before he collapsed completely. The ring on her finger burned, the bond surging to life, a current of his pain searing through her. "Rael," she gasped, but he only looked at her, not in agony, not in regret. He smiled, a small, broken smile only she would recognize, a smile from a memory long buried. Then his hand fell limp against hers, and the rain turned red. Rain hammered the stone as Leora knelt beside Rael, her hands slick with his blood. His body was heavy in her arms, heartbeat faint but there, steady, defiant. The dagger was still lodged near his ribs, the blade gleaming even as the storm washed it clean. She pressed her palm over the wound, ignoring the heat of his blood seeping through her sleeve. "Don't you dare die," she whispered, the words more a snarl than a plea. The bond flared, an invisible thread sparking between them, her pulse syncing with his. His pain shot through her chest like lightning, and her wolf howled inside her mind, a cry that echoed through the castle walls. Guards surged forward, but Rael's voice broke through the chaos, ragged but commanding. "No one touches her." Then his body went limp. By the time they carried him inside, the assassin had vanished, melted into the storm, as if the shadows themselves had swallowed him. Only the fallen dagger remained, black metal humming with faint heat. When Leora's fingers brushed the hilt, her wolf recoiled. The blade wasn't steel. It was enchanted, forged with blood magic. Hours passed in a blur. The hallways were filled with murmurs and fear, the scent of blood heavy in the air. They laid Rael on his bed, stripped of armor, chest rising in shallow breaths. The court physicians gathered, muttering incantations and applying salves, but the wound refused to close. "He should be dead," one whispered. "The blade missed his heart, but something holds it open." Leora dismissed them all. "Leave us." She sat beside him in silence, her hand resting over the bandage. The ring on her finger pulsed again, and when she concentrated, she could feel his heartbeat beneath her own, faint but alive. The bond tethered them, and through it she sensed something ancient coiled beneath his skin. When his eyes opened, they were fevered but focused. "You shouldn't have followed me," he said softly. "And you shouldn't have taken a blade meant for someone else." Rael's lips curved faintly. "That blade was meant for me, Leora. It always was." Her voice broke. "You're bleeding because of me." He turned his head toward her, breathing shallow. "No, because of what I am." He lifted a trembling hand to his chest, where the wound still seeped faintly through the bandage. This mark, this pain, isn't just flesh. Every alpha of the Blood Moon line is bound to the land and his pack. The magic that anchors me keeps them alive. If I die, they die. And you call that strength? She hissed. You live shackled to duty, not power. A long silence followed. Then, almost gently, he said, And what do you live for, Leora? Revenge? She looked away, but couldn't ignore the warmth radiating from him. When she leaned forward to replace the bandage, her fingers brushed his skin, and something inside her shifted. The bond thrummed louder. His breath caught, her pulse stuttered. The air thickened, charged with something that wasn't just magic. Her wolf went silent, but her heart screamed. She pulled back too late. His eyes had already caught hers. For a heartbeat, she saw him not as a king, not as the monster who destroyed her pack, but as a man torn apart by fate. I don't want your pity, he whispered. Then stop bleeding on me, she muttered, and his low laugh, rough and brief, broke the tension. Night fell, and Rael drifted into sleep. Leora sat in the chair beside his bed, unable to rest. Her gaze caught on a half-open drawer near the desk. Inside lay a small leather-bound book, edges worn smooth with age. Curiosity overrode reason. She opened it carefully. The handwriting was uneven, younger, a boy's script. I dreamed again. The fire, the same eyes in the smoke. She called my name. Page after page described the same vision, flames, ruin, and a girl whose name he didn't yet know. Then, near the end, the ink grew darker, frantic. The prophet said the fire will come for me. She said her name is Leora. If I find her, I'll live. If I don't, I'll burn. Her breath hitched. The diary fell from her hands. So this had never been coincidence. He'd known her name before the war, before the fire. He'd been looking for her. She turned toward the bed, her voice breaking. Rael, what did you do? But before she could wake him, a shout echoed through the halls. Boots thundered. 2 guards burst through the door, dragging a bloodied figure. The assassin, captured and barely conscious. They threw him to the ground. His mask was gone, revealing a gaunt, sharp-featured man with eyes clouded by fever. He coughed, blood spilling down his chin. Speak, a guard demanded. Who sent you? The assassin's lips twisted into a grin. His gaze slid past the guards and landed on Leora. King's fire, he rasped. For the king, not for her. Her heart stopped. He convulsed, body arching against the floor, eyes rolling white. Rael stirred in bed, waking to the sound. What did he say? Leora knelt beside the dying man. What fire? She whispered. What do you mean? The assassin's breath rattled. Then, with a final broken laugh, he whispered a single word. A name. Rael's childhood nickname. Then his eyes went still, and the last torch in the chamber flickered out. The night was a quiet wound, moonlight bleeding through torn clouds as Leora stood by the assassin's still body, her pulse roaring in her ears. The name he'd whispered before death clung to her like smoke. Rael's childhood nickname. Only someone from his buried past could have known that. When dawn came, it found Leora in the king's chamber, facing Rael as light carved through the curtains like judgment. His wound had nearly healed, but the memory of his collapse still trembled beneath her skin. You owe me the truth, she said quietly, voice like cracked glass. Rael leaned back against the marble column, his shirt half-buttoned, exposing the bandaged scar over his heart. Truth, he murmured, isn't always merciful. Then give me the unmerciful kind. He studied her, not as a prisoner now, but as something far more dangerous, the only person who could unmake him. The air between them thickened. Finally he spoke. There was a pact, he began, centuries old, between my bloodline and the order of prophetesses. They vowed to guard the throne through visions, to ensure the king's line would never fall. And when they foresaw betrayal, she whispered, "You slaughtered them." His eyes darkened, not with denial but with guilt. We didn't know who the traitor was. Every prophecy said the danger would come from within. My ancestor chose fear over faith. The words fell heavy, echoing through Leora's mind like chains. Prophetesses, her mother's lineage. Her breath hitched. Then my pack. Descendants of the last survivors, he admitted. The night they burned your home, they were hunting remnants of that bloodline. She turned away, every heartbeat an ache. And me? Rael's silence was answer enough. Later, unable to bear the castle walls, Leora slipped into the forest, back to where the trees still remembered screams. The ruined oracle grove lay before her, overgrown with thorn and moonweed. She walked barefoot through the ruins, each step stirring whispers in the leaves. The air smelled of ash and silver, memories. In the corner of a collapsed cellar, her fingers brushed something solid. She dug until her nails bled, pulling free a weathered box wrapped in cloth. Inside, letters, dozens of them, sealed in wax bearing the royal crest. She broke one open. The ink was faded, but the handwriting soft, feminine, desperate. If the moon chooses the child, protect her. Her power mirrors his. Two sides of the same flame. Their bond is the balance that keeps the blood moon curse asleep. Leora's hands trembled. A drawing fell out. A portrait. Two children standing side by side beneath the same crescent moon. The boy had Rael's eyes. The girl had hers. Her breath left her body. The ground swayed. He knew me. Even then. Footsteps rustled in the distance. She froze. A low hum, like a prayer, drifted through the ruins. From the darkness of the grove, a hooded figure stepped forward, her cloak brushing the stones. The moonlight caught her face, and Leora's heart stopped. It couldn't be. The woman's voice was soft, trembling with something ancient. You were both marked the night the moon bled. Leora's eyes widened, her throat dry. No, she whispered. You died in the fire. The woman smiled sadly, pulling back her hood. Her face, scarred but unmistakable, shimmered with tears. Death, she said, was the only way to hide from the king's curse. And before Leora could speak again, the wind shifted, carrying with it the faint scent of Rael's magic and the distant toll of a warning bell from the castle. The night itself seemed to hold its breath. The wind carried the echo of the castle's alarm bell, deep and mournful, rolling through the grove like thunder trapped beneath the earth. Leora stood frozen before the woman who should not have existed, her mentor, her protector, the one she'd watched burn beneath collapsing beams of fire years ago. Your scent hasn't changed, the woman said softly, brushing ash-dusted fingers against Leora's cheek. The wolf remembers what the world forgets. Leora stepped back, voice trembling. How are you alive? The woman's eyes glimmered, half light, half sorrow. Because I had to be. I swore an oath to protect the moon's chosen twins, those born to bind or break the blood moon curse. Leora's breath caught. Twins. The prophetess nodded. You were never alone, child. You had a brother, or rather, a twin whose soul mirrors your own. The two of you were born under a crimson eclipse, a rare balance of flame and shadow. One destined to destroy, one destined to save. Leora shook her head, the world spinning. If I have a twin, where is he? The woman's voice dropped to a whisper. Hidden, stolen before his first breath could touch the air. I sent him away to keep you both alive. The warlord who hunted your mother sought your combined power to enslave the kingdoms. When the flames came for your pack, it wasn't wrath, it was fear. I faked my death to mislead them, and I've watched from the shadows since, waiting for the blood moon to rise again. Leora's heart pounded. Then the one who burned us. The prophetess hesitated, glancing toward the castle's distant glow. I believed it was the warlord. But the truth is never pure, Leora. The fire that destroyed your pack carried the king's crest in its ashes. Leora's blood chilled. The prophetess led her deeper into the grove, to an underground sanctuary lit by moonlit crystals and flickering candles. Scrolls covered the walls, bound in silver threads. The air smelled of ink and old grief. "These are the archives," the prophetess said. "Records of royal decrees, secret orders, and bloodline prophecies. Everything the kingdom wanted buried." Leora scanned the parchments with trembling hands. One document bore the king's wax seal. Rails. It was an order written years ago, commanding a strike against a rebel outpost believed to shelter assassins. Her eyes darted to the coordinates burned into the margin. Her breath faltered. Those numbers, they weren't coordinates for an outpost. They marked her pack's valley. "No," she whispered. "No, this can't." "It was a mistake," the prophetess said gently. "A lie fed to a young ruler still learning the weight of power. But mistakes built from blood are not easily forgiven." The parchment trembled in Leora's grip. Rage welled like poison. He killed them, maybe not by will, but by his hand. The prophetess placed a hand on her shoulder. The twin bond was meant to unite light and flame. But now that balance has been shattered. Find the truth before vengeance blinds you. Leora stepped back, tears burning her eyes. "The truth?" she rasped. "The truth is ashes." She turned and ran, through the trees, through the echoing corridors of the castle she'd once called a cage. Guards called after her, but her fury drowned out their voices. The bond ring on her finger pulsed with heat, trying to restrain her, but she tore at it, the metal searing her skin. The throne room doors slammed open under her shove. Rael looked up from his council seat, his expression softening as he saw her, then hardening when he saw the torch in her hand. "Leora," he began, rising slowly. "Listen to me." "Did you listen when you sent the fire?" she shouted, her voice echoing off marble. "Did you hear the screams?" She hurled the torch at his portrait, a towering image of him crowned beneath a halo of light. Flames licked the canvas, devouring the king's painted face. Rael stepped forward, eyes flashing with pain, but he didn't stop her. The fire spread up the wall, smoke curling toward the ceiling. And then, beneath the charring paint, something began to emerge. A black mark, carved into the stone itself, twisted, ancient, pulsing faintly with ember light. Leora froze. It was not Rael's crest. It was the mark of a crown made of thorns and bone, the sigil of the war king of the Ashen Vale, the true enemy, the one who'd whispered lies into the ears of kings. The fire hissed and crackled, throwing gold and shadow across Rael's face. And for the first time, Leora saw not a monster, but a man who might have been just as deceived as she was. Still, the distance between them was too great for forgiveness. The throne room was still burning when the doors burst open again. Rael stepped through the smoke, his cloak dragging embers in its wake, eyes locked on the glowing mark still smoldering behind his portrait. The court guards had rushed to contain the flames, but none dared to approach the dark sigil pulsing against the wall. Ancient. Wrong. Alive. Leora stood before it, chest heaving, torch still clenched in her fist. Her face was streaked with soot and tears, but her gaze was unflinching. "Tell me," she hissed, her voice trembling between fury and disbelief. "How long have you known?" Rael's eyes found hers, pain flickering beneath the steel. "Known what?" "That this," she pointed to the mark, "was watching us. That you weren't the monster I thought, but the fool who let another wear your face while you hid behind your throne." The guards shifted uneasily. The scent of smoke and fear thickened the air. Rael took a slow step forward. "You think I wanted this? That I chose for your pack to burn? For my crest to be carved into the War King's banners?" His voice broke for a moment, quiet but cutting. "Everything I built was to keep that mark from returning. I failed." Leora's lips curled into something between a sneer and a sob. "You didn't fail, Rael. You obeyed. You turned your face while the War King carved his throne out of our bones." Gasps rippled through the court. The nobles had gathered now, whispering behind jeweled hands as firelight danced over their fear-stricken faces. Then, the great hall doors opened again, this time not by Rael's command. A scout stumbled in, armor dented, face pale as frost. "Your Majesty," he rasped, falling to one knee. "The Outer Watch reports, packs uniting under one banner. The veil has risen again. The War King marches north. His forces carry your crest, twisted into black ash." A silence fell heavy and suffocating. Rael closed his eyes, as if each word was a blade driven into him. When he spoke, his voice was low. "He's turning them into his army, using my mark as his claim." Leora's gaze hardened. "Then he's not just your enemy, Rael. He's your reflection." But before anyone could respond, another voice echoed through the hall, one that had been silent for too long. The prophetess stepped forward from the shadows near the council benches, her cloak glinting faintly in the firelight. "There's more to this war than banners and blood," she said softly. "You both deserve the truth, before the moon binds you to a fate you cannot undo." Rael turned sharply. "You should not be here." "And yet I am," she replied. Her eyes lingered on Leora. "You asked once why I vanished after your birth, why I hid your twin. You must understand what was promised that night." The court leaned closer, tension thickening like storm clouds. "Rael," she continued, "when you were barely a boy, your father made a desperate pact with the War King, but it wasn't for power. It was for her." She nodded toward Leora. She was dying. The twin bond fractured at birth. The War King offered salvation in exchange for one thing: a share of the twin's power. Your father agreed, and when he fell, you sealed that blood pact to keep her alive. Leora froze, the room spinning around her. "That's not true," she whispered. "He would never." Rael's silence was answer enough. Tears welled in her eyes as realization struck like lightning. "You gave him part of me." His jaw tightened. "I gave him a chance for you to live." The words cracked between them, raw and irreversible. The court erupted into murmurs, shock and horror rippling like wildfire. The prophetess spoke again, voice breaking. "The War King never took his payment in blood. He took it in destiny. He split the twins' bond. Half of her light was carried away. That's why your power burns unbalanced, Leora. The other half lives in the one he took." Rael turned, his voice low, trembling. "You mean?" The prophetess nodded. "The twin is alive, and now he serves the War King." A thunderous noise broke through her words. The doors slammed open once more, this time with a violent crack. A messenger staggered in, smoke rising from his armor, his body scorched and trembling. He dragged himself forward, leaving a trail of blackened blood across the marble. "Your Majesty," he gasped, barely breathing. He's coming." In his charred hands he clutched something, a crown, forged of twisted black metal, dripping with soot and embers. He dropped it at Rael's feet, where it rolled and came to rest against his boot. Rael bent to pick it up, and froze. Tangled in the melted iron was a single lock of hair, silver white, the same color as Leora's. Leora's breath hitched, her wolf rising with disbelief and grief so deep it cut through her chest. The messenger's final whisper rasped through the hall like a curse. "The War King's heir. Where's her face?" He fell silent. Rael's hand clenched around the black crown, its edges biting into his palm until blood dripped down his wrist. His voice, when it came, was nothing but a whisper of dread. "He's not just using her power," he said, eyes locked on the dying flames. "He's her twin." The torches flickered violently, as if the moon itself trembled at the revelation. And somewhere, far beyond the castle walls, a war horn sounded beneath the blood-red sky, the War King's call echoing like a promise of ruin. The black crown still lay between them, heavy as sin. Smoke curled from its edges, carrying the scent of burnt iron and blood. Leora's pulse roared in her ears. Her world was unraveling again, just when she thought she'd already lost everything. "My twin," she whispered, the word strange and sharp on her tongue. "Lyran." The name seemed to awaken something ancient. The torches flickered blue, reacting to the bloodline that bound them. Rael's expression hardened, though his eyes were full of guilt. "I didn't know he lived," he said quietly. "The War King must have taken him after the pact, raised him to hate what we are." Leora turned on him, voice shaking with rage. "You made that possible. You sealed that blood pact. You gave him my life to save me." "I gave him half your pain," Rael said, his voice low, almost pleading. "I thought it would balance you, not destroy him." The prophetess stepped forward then, clutching a silver mirror etched with runes that shimmered like moonlight on still water. "Words will not heal this," she murmured. "But truth might." She placed the mirror on the floor, whispering an incantation that made the air thrum. Symbols flared, forming a circle of light around them. "If he still breathes, the bond between you will answer this call." The mirror fogged, swirling with smoke and memory until the haze cleared. Leora gasped. A vast hall appeared within the reflection, stone forged of obsidian, torches burning black. At its center stood a man bound in chains of molten silver, his posture regal despite the restraints. His hair was pale as frost, his eyes a mirror of her own, storm gray glowing faintly under the blood moon's reflection. Lyran, her twin, but his expression was nothing like hers. It was carved of ice and defiance. When he spoke, his voice was steady, too steady. "Move the legions north," he ordered the armored soldiers kneeling before him. "Let them taste the ashes they once fed us." Leora's breath hitched. The voice, it was hers, stripped of warmth and mercy. Rael's jaw clenched. "He commands the War King's army." The prophetess whispered a prayer under her breath. "The War King forged his chains not from metal, but from prophecy. He's bound by fate itself. But his will—" She looked to Leora. "His will is his own." Lyran's head tilted suddenly as though he'd heard her. The mirror rippled, and his gaze turned, straight toward them. Leora staggered back, clutching her chest as something sharp twisted deep inside. The bond flared, heat crawling up her arm, through her heart, into her skull. "Rael," she gasped, gripping the ring on her finger. "It's burning. What is this?" Rael stepped toward her, eyes grim. "The ring is what keeps you alive." Her head snapped up, pain flashing behind her eyes. "What?" "It wasn't meant to cage you," Rael said. "It was meant to shield you. From him. Your twin's magic feeds on yours. Without the bond's protection, he could pull your life force through the bloodline. Her fingers dug into her palm, the ring pulsing like a heartbeat. "So I'm chained too?" She spat. "Chained to the very blood he wants to consume?" Rael's face was drawn tight with sorrow. "If you remove it, you'll die. If he reaches you through it, he'll take more than your power." The prophetess whispered, "The twins are two halves of one soul. One cannot survive the death of the other." Leora turned back to the mirror, the reflection still alive with shadows. Lyron stood now directly in front of the glass, his face filling its surface. His lips curved into a cruel, knowing smile. "Sister," he said, and his voice was a whisper that seemed to echo inside her skull. "You wear my leash." Leora's breath caught. She stumbled back as the glass began to vibrate. Cracks spidered across its surface. Rael reached for her, but it was too late. The mirror shattered. A shockwave burst through the room, shattering nearby windows and scattering shards like frozen rain. Leora collapsed to her knees, clutching her head as whispers flooded her mind. His voice, low and commanding, wrapping around her thoughts. "You should have burned with me." Rael shouted her name, catching her before she hit the ground. The bond ring glowed red-hot, veins of light spreading beneath her skin like molten fire. And beneath it all, his laughter. Cold, beautiful, endless. Somewhere across the kingdoms the War King's army stirred, and in a distant throne of black stone, Lyron opened his eyes and whispered to no one. "The blood moon rises. Let her come." The shards of the shattered mirror glimmer like stars scattered across the stone floor. Leora gasps, clutching her head as Lyron's voice claws through her mind. Visions flash, his laughter echoing through burning villages, his eyes gleaming silver under the blood moon. "Stop," she whispers, voice breaking. "Get out of my head." Her knees buckle, but Rael catches her, his hand steady against her trembling cheek. His heartbeat is thunder beneath his armor, steady, grounding. "Look at me, Leora," he commands softly. "He can't take you if you remember who you are." Her eyes snap open, wild, glowing faintly red. For a heartbeat, it's not her looking at him. It's Lyron. "You can't save her, Alpha," the voice hisses through her lips. "She's mine." Rael's grip tightens, not in anger, but desperation. "Then I'll fight you both if I must." Scene 2. The prophetess's chamber. Later, candles flicker in the dark as the prophetess kneels over a pool of lunar water. Her face is pale, fear trembling behind wisdom. "The bond between them deepens," she murmurs. "The moon no longer knows where one begins and the other ends." Rael stands behind her, jaw clenched. "Then tell me how to stop it." The prophetess dips her finger into the pool. The reflection shifts, showing the two twins as infants beneath a bleeding moon, one crying, one silent. "You cannot stop what was written," she says, "but you can delay the fall. The prophecy speaks of love and ruin. When one twin bleeds for love, the other burns the world. Her heart, Alpha, is the key." Leora, standing in the doorway, whispers hoarsely, "If I love, I destroy him." The prophetess looks up, sorrow in her eyes. "If your love is pure, it might destroy you instead." That night, Leora stands on the castle balcony. The moon paints her in silver. Every breath she takes trembles with pain, and something darker, something calling. Rael approaches quietly, his cloak brushing against the stone. "He's calling you again, isn't he?" She nods. "I can feel his chains, and his rage. I think he wants me to feel it too." "You are not him," Rael growls. "Aren't I?" she whispers. "We share blood, soul, even breath. How long before I become him?" Rael steps closer, the distance between them heavy with unspoken truth. "You forget one thing," he says, voice low and rough. "He doesn't have your heart." Their gazes lock. The air hums, charged, dangerous. Then the prophetess bursts into the room, her voice urgent. "We're out of time." Torches surround the sacred circle carved into the temple floor. The prophetess draws runes in blood and ash, her voice chanting in an ancient tongue. Rael and Leora stand in the center, palms pressed together. His blood, royal and cursed. Hers, divine and burning. This bond will tie your fates, the prophetess warns. If he falls, you fall. If you die, his soul is lost to shadow. Rael meets Leora's eyes. Then we fall together. Their blood mingles, glowing crimson beneath the moonlight. The air thickens, heavy, trembling with unseen power. Leora's heart races as she feels Rael's warmth flood through her veins, silencing Lyran's whispers, if only for a breath. The prophetess's chant rises, until a shadow stirs behind her. A gust of cold wind extinguishes the torches. The air splits with a scream. From the edge of the circle, a dark figure steps forward. Lyran's shadow, eyes like molten silver, smile like the grave. You think binding her will save her? The voice echoes from every direction. Then bleed for it. Before Rael can turn, the shadow lunges, its blade sinking deep into the prophetess's chest. Her cry pierces the night. The ritual shatters. Blood splatters across the runes. The moon turns red again, bleeding in the sky. Leora screams as the power surges out of control, the light of the bond consuming the chamber. And as the prophetess falls, her final whisper drifts between them. The temple lies in ruins. Smoke and moonlight coil around broken runes. Rael cradles the prophetess in his arms, his hands slick with her blood. Her eyes flutter open, dim embers of the divine. Don't speak, Rael pleads, his voice cracking, but she smiles faintly, blood trickling from her lips. The bond is incomplete. She whispers, barely audible. She must choose you, freely, or the moon will turn against her. Her fingers tremble against his chest, tracing the sigil of kingship one last time. Then her hand falls limp. The light fades from her eyes. A silence deeper than death fills the chamber. Rael's shoulders quake, not from rage, but from the weight of every life taken in the name of destiny. Behind him, Leora stands, eyes glowing twin gold and silver. The air around her hums with power she cannot control. She's gone, she whispers, and I can feel him. He's getting stronger. Rael looks up at her, voice low, broken. Then we'll meet him in fire. The citadel awakens to chaos. Horns echo through the mountain pass as the War King's banners rise in the distance, black and crimson, shimmering beneath the blood moon. Rael mounts the fortress steps, his armor catching firelight, his crown gone, replaced by scars and resolve. Open the gates, he commands. We fight under the bleeding moon. Leora follows close behind, her cloak torn, her hand still trembling from the incomplete ritual. Soldiers part as she passes. Some bow, others stare in fear. They think I'll destroy them, she says quietly. Then prove them right, Rael replies, but not us. The sky splits with thunder as the War King's forces surge forward. Wolves, witches, men in bone armor. The earth shakes beneath their march. And when the first arrow flies, the moon burns red. Flames consume the night. Magic clashes with steel. The air thickens with ash and screams. Leora stands on the battlements, summoning fire from her veins, each pulse brighter, fiercer. Every time she strikes, she feels Lyran's heartbeat inside her, matching hers. Stop fighting me, she cries into the wind. You fight yourself, sister. His voice drips through her mind like poison. Every kill feeds me. Rael fights below, blade blazing with the power of the blood bond. He cuts through shadows and soldiers alike, each movement precise, desperate. His gaze keeps searching for her, even in the storm of death. When their eyes meet across the chaos, she feels her resolve crack. Come back to me, he mouths. But then, the ground trembles, and a voice far too familiar pierces through the carnage. Atop the ridge beyond the citadel, a lone figure stands, tall, cloaked in shadow. The wind tears his hood away, revealing a face almost identical to hers, though twisted by pain and hate. Lyran. His silver eyes blaze, his chains shattered, his aura black as ink. "You remember me now, don't you, sister?" He calls out, his voice carrying through fire and screams. Flashes rip through her mind, the nursery, the cradle, the night the flames consumed their home. A man, Rael, pulling her from the fire while another child screamed her name. "He chose you," Lyran snarls. "You were his moon, his promise. I was the shadow left to burn." Leora's breath falters. That's not true, he didn't know. Lyran's laughter is hollow, cruel. "He knew enough to save you. Now I'll take everything he loves." Behind Lyran, the War King steps forward, his armor forged from bone and darkness, his crown glowing like molten iron. He lays a hand on Lyran's shoulder and the air splits with power. "You were born as two halves of the same curse," the War King intones. "Now, you shall become one." Black smoke pours from the War King's body, seeping into Lyran's veins. Their shadows merge, twisting, expanding, until a monstrous shape towers beneath the bleeding moon. Two voices, one scream. The battlefield falls silent as every creature, wolf and man alike, bows in terror. Rael staggers back, eyes widening. "No!" Leora clutches her chest, collapsing as pain sears through her soul. The twin bond pulses violently, her heartbeat sinking with the creature's. Her voice breaks in a whisper. "Rael, the prophecy. It's not about who wins, it's about who survives." The red moon pulses once, then splits the sky. As Rael runs toward her, the monstrous fusion of Lyran and the War King roars, its shadow blotting out the stars. Leora's eyes roll back as she collapses into darkness, whispering one last word. "Brother." The moon ignites. The screen fades to black beneath the sound of a single heartbeat. The world is burning. The citadel that once crowned the mountain stands split open, its towers crumbling into the valley like dying stars. Fire licks the sky, bleeding into the red moon above. The sound of war has turned to a dirge, screams swallowed by wind and ash. Leora lies motionless amid the wreckage, her body half buried beneath broken marble. Her fingers twitch, but her mind drifts elsewhere, somewhere between the living and the lost. In another realm. She opens her eyes to silence, no fire, no blood, only the echo of her heartbeat, slow, distant, as though it belongs to someone else. She stands in a field of glass and moonlight, the air shimmering around her. "Where am I?" Her voice sounds smaller here. She steps forward and each footfall ripples across the ground like light over water. Then she sees him, a boy, no older than 12, standing beside a small moonlit pond. His eyes are familiar, his silence heavier than words. "Rael?" she breathes. He turns, and in that child's face, she sees not the king who ruled her, nor the man who scarred her past, but the orphan who had watched kingdoms die around him and learned that mercy cost more than cruelty. The air trembles, memories unfold like cracks in glass. Rael, standing before a burning village. Rael, saving a little girl from the fire. Rael, kneeling before a dark altar, his hands bound in blood. "I swore I'd protect her," the boy whispers, "even if she never knew my name." Leora's throat tightens. You saved me that night." "And doomed your brother," he answers quietly. "I was the coward who let one child burn to save the other." He looks up at her then, older, changing before her eyes, until she sees the man she knows. His voice breaks. "All these years I carried that fire inside me. Every battle, every cruelty. It was penance. I thought if I kept you near, I could atone." Leora reaches for him, her hands trembling. "Rael, stop. You were never my captor." A tear slips down her cheek. "You were my shield." Their hands touch, and reality splits. In the burning citadel, Rael stands before the War King, sword in hand, his armor cracked, his breath uneven. Around them the battlefield has gone still. Even the fire seems to wait. The War King towers over him, his fused shadow pulsing with Lyran's energy. You cannot win, Rael. Every wound you take strengthens me. Rael's gaze flickers toward Leora's motionless form across the courtyard. Then I'll give you all of me. He drives his blade into his own chest. The War King stumbles as blood ignites along the weapon's runes, ancient, forbidden magic, older than crowns. A beam of light bursts from Rael's heart, tearing through the smoke and reaching Leora where she lies. In the spirit realm, Leora's world trembles. The child version of Rael begins to fade, his outline dissolving into light. "What are you doing?" she cries. "Finishing what I began," his voice whispers through her. "If you are to stand against him, you'll need more than the moon's power. You'll need a king's heart." The ground cracks beneath her. Fire seeps through the fractures, red and gold. "No, Rael, please, don't do this." "I already have." His voice fades, leaving warmth in its wake. A heartbeat echoing within hers. The tether between them tightens. Her chest burns. And then she feels everything. His courage, his guilt, his love. All of it pouring into her like the final breath of the dying moon. In reality, the citadel quakes. Soldiers drop to their knees as Rael's body collapses, his crown rolling across the stone and landing beside Leora's hand. Her body arches, flames licking her veins. Her eyes snap open, one silver, one gold, both blazing with divine fury. She rises slowly, the air trembling around her, the moonlight bending to her will. Her voice is no longer just hers, it's layered, deeper, ancient. "You wanted a god." Her hair whips in the rising storm, her aura blazing brighter than the burning towers. "You created me instead." The War King staggers back, for the first time afraid. The fused shadow behind him shrieks, Lyran's voice echoing inside it. And as the last flames of Rael's life fade into her, Leora steps forward, queen, weapon, and judgment incarnate. The world is quiet now. The battlefield that once echoed with screams and fire lies buried beneath a still blanket of ash. The moon, once red, now paling, hangs over the shattered citadel like an exhausted heart. Leora stands in the ruins of the War King's throne, her bare feet scorched from the ground's fading heat. Her power still hums beneath her skin. Too much, too wild, too alive. The air ripples around her, bending like glass about to break. Before her, Lyran lies half buried in the rubble. His silver hair clings to his face, streaked with soot and blood. The same eyes she once saw in her own reflection now look up at her, softer than they've ever been. "You were always the light." His voice cracks, a whisper barely holding shape. "They told me the moon chose me, but it was always you." Leora kneels beside him. For a moment, neither speaks. The moonlight filters between them, trembling, almost tender. She reaches to touch his face, but her hands shake as flames still coil around her fingers. "You were never my enemy, Lyran," she says, voice breaking. "You were my other half." He smiles weakly, a ghost of what he once was. "Then end it, sister. End us. Before the curse takes you too." In the other realm, the world blurs. Ash turns to mist. Wind fades into silence, and in the silver wash of light, she feels him. Rael. He steps out of the shadows, his armor cracked, his crown gone, but his eyes steady, so steady it hurts. The sight of him steals her breath. He looks neither dead nor alive, caught somewhere between both. "Leora," he murmurs, voice low, rough as if torn by flame. "It's time to let go." Tears gather in her eyes. "Let go? Of what? Everything I've ever been was built from pain. Then let it burn away," he says softly. "Not in vengeance, in mercy." He walks closer, stopping when their breaths almost meet. The heat between them softens, melting into something raw and human. Every king of Blood Moon was cursed to protect power instead of love, he whispers. But you, his fingers graze her cheek, you were meant to end that. To choose love when all the world taught you hate. The moon above flickers, its surface fractures like glass. Leora feels her heart tearing, power clawing to escape. If I let go, I lose everything. No, Rael breathes. You gain freedom. In reality, Leora opens her eyes. Her body glows with lunar fire. The ash begins to move, drawn upward by invisible threads of light. Around her, fallen soldiers breathe again. The wind carries the scent of rain instead of blood. She looks down at Lyran, whose breath has grown shallow. His hand twitches, reaching for her. Forgive me, he whispers. She nods, placing her palm against his chest. Her blood flows into him, glowing silver as it seeps into his veins. His wounds knit together, but his eyes flutter closed. The power rages, begging for release. But instead of destroying, she bends it, reshapes it, turns it toward life. The crimson glow that once cursed the moon shifts, softens, and fades to silver. A wind howls through the ruins, then silence. The moonlight settles. The curse is gone, that day. Rael stands behind her, alive, real, breathing. The bond between them glows faintly across their wrists, no longer a chain, but a thread of light. Leora turns, trembling. You didn't fade. You wouldn't let me, he says, a small smile tugging at his lips. The bond found balance when you did. She steps forward. The distance between them closes like a sigh. He cups her face, his thumb brushing away a tear that catches the first light of dawn. It's over, she whispers. No, Rael murmurs, eyes on the horizon. It's beginning. Above them, the moon fades to silver, and dawn spills across the valley for the first time in generations. As the survivors gather below, Leora stands on the broken throne's steps, Rael's hand in hers. Lyran's body rests peacefully among wildflowers that bloom from ash. A whisper rides the wind, soft, eternal, carrying the voice that began it all. Every century, the moon chooses one soul to break the curse of kings. Leora lifts her gaze to the fading moon. Its glow catches her hair like a crown of light. Then let this be the last. She turns toward Rael, her voice barely a breath. Let the next century know only peace. He smiles. And love, he adds. Their hands tighten together as the sun rises behind them, painting the sky gold over the ruins of Blood Moon. And for the first time in their lifetimes, the world feels whole again.